drafted a surprise, if not a shock.
Under no circumstance, we all know this shouldn't have happened. Tomorrow's the day. We're going to be happy regardless.
One of the truly stunning stories in the history of the draft. You have Shedeur Sanders sliding straight in to Saturday. Nobody knows where he's going to go.
With the 144th pick, the Cleveland Browns select Shedeur Sanders.
Take a minute, be upset that you fell in the draft, but I think now you attack this opportunity and prove everyone wrong.
Thank you for the fans, thank you for everybody, thank you for the Browns organization for giving me a chance. That's all I need.
So on top of all of that weirdness, there was also the prank phone call, the one where the caller identified himself as the Saints general manager, Mickey Loomis, and then told Shedeur, "We're drafting you." Except it wasn't Loomis. In fact, it wasn't anyone associated with the Saints. It was the son of the Falcons defensive coordinator, Jeff Ulbrich, a 21-year-old named Jax, who allegedly, and I quote, unintentionally came across Sanders' draft contact info on an open iPad while he was visiting his parents. Jax then very intentionally wrote down the number, very intentionally planned the call, and then recorded said intentional call. But Jax is sorry. He's now apologized to Sanders and released a social media statement saying it was a tremendous mistake, completely inexcusable, embarrassing, and shameful. And then there are the Falcons. They said in a statement that Jax's father, their defensive coordinator, Jeff, was, quote, unaware of the data exposure or any facets of the prank and was made aware of the above only after the fact. The Atlanta Falcons do not condone this behavior and send our sincere apologies to Shedeur Sanders and his family. The Falcons say they're also reviewing their protocols and are working with the NFL to keep this kind of thing from ever happening again.
All right, after a full day removed from the draft, maybe it's time to put a final bow on what we saw there in Green Bay. To do that, we bring in our draft analyst, Matt Miller. All right, so, of course, Travis Hunter's been saying this forever, that he wants to play on both sides of the ball, offense and defense. So let's say he does do that, though, Matt. Where should he play, though, primarily?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. You have to major at one position before you minor at another. I would say wide receiver is where you play him. I think scouting him over the course of the year, that's where I thought he was best. He's incredibly explosive with the ball in his hands. He dominates. For a 6 foot, 185-pound guy, he dominates at the catch point. Every ball that goes up in the air, on offense or defense, he seemingly finds a way to go get it. He's so great at tracking the ball, adjusting his body. But watching him with the ball in his hands after the catch, that first 5 yards, he's so explosive, he's so slippery as a runner. The NFL right now is a scoring league. We need more great wide receivers. When you have Trevor Lawrence, you have Brian Thomas Jr. And oh, by the way, when receivers are making $40.5 million a year, I think I'd want to be playing offense if I'm Travis Hunter.
All right, he scored 15 receiving touchdowns last season for Colorado, so clearly he's an A-caliber player at that position. How about this? 5 years from now, Matt, who's the player we're going to look back on and say, we can't believe he was not drafted higher?
I'm not going to say the player you guys think I'm going to say here. I'm going to go Luther Burden, a wide receiver now with the Chicago Bears from the University of Missouri. I had him ranked as my number 13 overall player in this draft. He slipped to the Bears at number 39, and he now gets to join an offense with DJ Moore, with Rome Odunze, Colston Loveland, Cole Kmet, and someone named Caleb Williams, who was a generational talent at quarterback in last year's draft. This is an ideal fit in Ben Johnson's offense. Burden was the best wide receiver in the draft in terms of yards after catch ability. Now he goes to an offensive scheme that is great at generating space, putting the ball in guys' hands. Think about what Jameson Williams has done for the Detroit Lions. Luther Burden can be a similar type player for the Chicago Bears, and this is a great young cast of players that Johnson gets to work with. But Burden is one of the steals in this draft, fantasy football players. You'll want to remember that name.
Matt, I know this is part of your job description, but I've always been hesitant about giving grades to draft classes because you really can't judge them until they get on the field and play 2, 3, 4 years down the road. But let me ask you this. Let me phrase it this way. What was your favorite draft class by one of the 32 teams?
Yeah, I'm going to go to the Philadelphia Eagles, which the rich get richer, right?
Yeah.
Right after beating Patrick Mahomes and maybe ending the Chiefs dynasty, Howie Roseman gets one of my favorite players to draft in Jahad Campbell, who slips because of a shoulder injury. He can play like a souped-up Zach Bond. He can play edge rusher, linebacker in the stack. He can chase quarterbacks, and he can drop into coverage. He is an ascending player whose best ball is ahead of him, which sounds like every Eagles player ever. And then in the second round, they got a hard-hitting safety in Andrew Makuba, who's also a ball hawk with 4 picks last year.
All right, so I don't like to grade draft classes, but I will grade your segment here on SportsCenter. Solid A, my man. Solid A.
Appreciate it.
Matt Miller here on
All right, the smoke has cleared. Time for a debrief on the 3 days in Green Bay from our draft analyst, Matt Miller. Matt, as you know, it takes years to truly evaluate a draft, but we don't have that kind of time. So knee-jerk reaction, which team won the draft?
Well, stop me if you've heard this before, but the Philadelphia Eagles won this draft. This is a team that is coming off a Super Bowl victory in which they frustrated and hit and stopped Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs dynasty. So what did Howie Roseman do? He went defense with his first 5 picks. Jahad Campbell was a top 20 player on my board coming out of Alabama. He could play as an edge rusher, as a stack linebacker. He could drop into coverage. He's a lot like Zach Bond, who was just an all-pro player for them, but even more athletic. And then Andrew Makuba, a safety from Texas, is going to join a secondary that already has Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean as key core young players. Makuba is a big-time hitter who had 4 interceptions this past year. So it is very exciting to see them continue to build on defense. And I think Ty Robinson is another player that we have to look at on this team that could be a big-time impact outside of the first 2 rounds.
All right, the rich get richer there. The biggest trade went down on Thursday. The Jags moving up to take Travis Hunter. He said all along he wants to play both offense and defense. Where would you play him?
I would play him at wide receiver. I think that's where he's most explosive. The NFL right now, it's a scoring league. You need guys who can go out and score touchdowns. Travis Hunter with Brian Thomas Jr. in Jacksonville is a dynamic duo for Trevor Lawrence. It's going to increase that passing game. I would also remind Travis, wide receivers are making $40.5 million a year now. That's what Jamar Chase is making. Corners, it's about $25 million a year. It's good money on both sides of the ball. You want at least one more snap a game at wide receiver, so that's where you could be listed. But I do think for his career trajectory at 6 foot, 188 pounds, I would much rather Travis be trying to avoid tacklers instead of going and having to initiate and seek contact. I also think his upside is higher once he expands and really hones in on the route running ability that we've seen him display at Colorado the last 2 years.
And by the way, there's no salary average for a guy who plays both wide receiver and cornerback. That doesn't happen. Let's talk about the quarterback position now. Cam Ward went number 1, but which other quarterback do you see with the highest upside that went in the draft?
Yeah, David, when I think about upside, I think about traits, rare traits. Jalen Milroe, who is now a Seattle Seahawk, has rare traits as a runner and both as a deep ball passer. The beautiful thing about Seattle is he's going to now have time sitting behind Sam Darnold where he can learn, he can develop, he can start to work on some of the technical issues that plagued him late in the 2024 season. But Jalen Milroe is an incredibly hard worker. He's an incredibly bright young man. And again, the running tools that he has, I bet we see him in some packages in his rookie year. A lot like Jalen Hurts, a lot like Lamar Jackson were used in their rookie seasons. They can get into the field. They can start to adapt to the speed of the game, and then we'll see them start to learn the passing game and have more added to their plate.
Milroe,